right, so tell us a little bit about, you have had some incredible successes, also some great dumpster fires of companies. And I'm so glad that you're going to be, this will probably be one of our most candid speakers, so I'm really excited for his story today. But you had a great long line of companies that you've been involved in building and starting. So let's just start from the beginning. What did you do when you were 10 years old, when you discovered that spark of entrepreneurism?
Well, we grew up in very mean circumstances, and I needed to become the breadwinner when I was 10. So I got a paper route, and the guy who was before me had fabricated about 60 accounts so that he could go on a trip to Disneyland, I think. And you know, I took it over and went, hey, you know, there's 20, not 80. And it was my first, I didn't know what it was called at the time, but it was my first foray into blue ocean marketing.
Give a good example of what blue ocean marketing is? Cool.
So blue ocean marketing is like you go where nobody else is. And there was a 5-story apartment building with about 2,000 apartments near my route. So I started walking up and down all the stairs and set it up to be about 400 accounts, and then they kept cutting it. You know, I would do 400, they would cut it into 3. I would do 400 again, they would cut it again. Anyway, so that was my first job, was as a paper boy for the Phoenix Gazette.
Exciting. All right, so then your first, so that kind of meandered your way in, and then your first job out of college was for Citibank?
Yep, I was a rocket scientist, is what they were called. I hated every...
Not working on rockets, though.
Moment of it. I mean, I was doing financial analysis. My first major project was to calculate the ROI on the health and benefit plans that Citibank gave to its employees, because things were kind of rough back then, and Wall Street was demanding, you know, justify the platinum plan you are giving all these people. And I was able to do an analysis that stood up to Wall Street analysts that showed that, you know, the first few dollars in for benefits was kind of a 1-for-1 ROI. But as you got bigger, as you did more and more things and it got more expensive, it was actually a 5x ROI. And then of course there's a point of limitation there, so, or point of diminishing returns. So my job, that was my first job, and it stuck with me because I have the math, and I had to, I've always had really excellent benefit plans at my companies, and I always have to defend them with my investors. And whipping that math out is pretty good, but the bottom line is, you know, you want your people to be healthy, you want them to be happy, you want them to be focused and concentrated on work when they're there, and having a life when they're not. And so we, like for instance, our plan at SurchX is we pay for everything. We pay 100% of the what's it called, premium, and 100% of co-pays, 100% of deductibles. We have unlimited dental, vision, health. You get to go to the Mayo Clinic if you want, wherever you need to be. And the idea is, I don't know how someone who makes less than $100,000 a year affords a $15,000 family deductible. I don't know how they do that. And what happens is, you have a benefit plan, and then people are afraid to use it. Mm-hmm. And they come to work sick, or they have a kid at home and they're worried about them and everything. It's like, hey, if you're sick, I don't want you to come to work because I don't want you getting everybody else sick. And when you come to work, I want you working, and I want you happy and healthy, and I want you to not worry about the fact that your kid is sick, and that's what we do. So that I kind of went on a riff there. But
Yeah.
the project was to justify that. I ended up hating that job so much that when Citibank bought Great Western Bank here in Phoenix in, I think, 87, I know many of you were not alive then, which is difficult for me, but they bought the bank in 87 and I begged to come out and run part of the bank, so I did that.
Great, and that was kind of your first run at being an entrepreneur. What project did you discover when you were there?
Well, I did several. One got me actually in trouble because back then there was something called the Resolution Trust Corporation, and they had taken over all the savings and loans in the country that had failed. And the biggest one of the biggest ones in the country that failed was Bank. And I was running the northwest region of the bank, and I decided to buy the list. Bank decided to call all their second mortgages. Can you imagine that? Right? So they had all these credit lines and second mortgages, and they just said, you got to pay them. You got 45 days. And
What year was this?
I think it was 1980, might have been 1988.
Okay.
90, something like that. Anyway, you lose the
Yeah.
fog of war. So I bought the list of people, Bank mortgage holders in my region, and sat down with my staff, and we, licked the labels, and I signed the letters and sent them all out. And we wrote more loans than the entire bank combined. And I got in trouble because I didn't clear it with marketing, I didn't clear it with legal.
Gosh, that marketing department.
Yeah. And they're like, well, why didn't you tell the rest of us? And I'm like, I'm running my business. It didn't occur to me. I mean, it's not that I'm selfish. I wish you had thought of it. But, so that's that.
All right, cool. So that's when you decided corporate life was really not for you. And then kind of, right?
Well, I got fired. I got laid off.
It's true. Okay. It decided it wasn't having you, so.
Well, I made the company, I made about $120 million for the bank in a year and a half. And we had a new profit center that I set up as an entrepreneur. And then Brazil defaulted on all their loans, and Citibank took this huge hit, and John Reed, our CEO, who I actually had worked for, said this whole class of employees is gone. This whole class of officers, just, I don't care what they're doing, who they are, who they know, who they're, it's just, you're gone. And so I got laid off, and I had been with the bank like 4 years, so I got a whopping 4 weeks of severance. I had a new house, a new kid, a new wife, and I decided, I don't play golf, but I decided to go play golf that day alone. And I saw one of my clients on the course, and he said, what are you doing out here in the middle of the day? I said, I got laid off. And he's like, good, now you can make some real money. And I didn't really get that, but I decided that day I would never work for another company again. And I haven't since.
All right. So then from there, you took that subject matter expertise from working at Citibank, and then you turned that into the National Credit Foundation.
God, yes, I did. National Credit Foundation, back before credit repair was a bad thing, was the largest credit repair company in the country. And I started it in my bedroom, and we took it to about 30 million in sales in a year. And I had set up my partnership agreement just horribly, who's the lawyer, John? Where are you? Yeah, I could have used you back then. And as soon as we became very successful, he grabbed all the cash, and I ended up having to, and then ejected me and the rest of my team, and stopped doing the servicing. So he was just collecting the money, and he was not performing the service. And I ended up strapping on my pistol and walking into the office one day and telling everybody to leave. And took the company in bankruptcy, and had a really awful conversation with the FTC, and got out of it without getting in trouble. But really learned an awful lot in my first catastrophic failure.
Yeah, I would say so. And then moving on from there, then you went ahead and you moved to Dallas.
I did.
And what drew you to move to Dallas?
I had a client at the bank who had a company that made, do you guys remember the Amiga? Anybody remember the Amiga? Yeah, Scott did. For those of you who don't know, it was really the graphics heavy computer before the Apple. And I had a client from Citibank who had bought that company and called me the day after that company filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy, Commodore. It would be like Intel declaring bankruptcy, what do you do now? And he told me that he needed to get his money out of the deal, and he offered me a nice job, and off I went to Dallas in the big U-Haul with the trailer and the dog hanging out of it. And it was the middle of the summer, and he kept his head out, and we had this Toyota Sienna van, and he had dog spit the whole. It was like a racing stripe of dog spit. Hysterical. And we moved to Dallas. We didn't know anybody. We just moved in, and I took over that company and was able to get his money out of it, wind it down, responsibly, and got everybody paid, and then got a nice bonus, and sat there and said, what's next?
Yeah. And then what was next was Internet America. I'll just skip right ahead and share that story. So what made you decide to get into the internet business? Because you went up against AOL.
Yeah. In fact, we bought AOL's mailing list 3 times before they got wise. And those of you who understand marketing analytics, I sent a postcard to AOL's list, and we were the first flat rate internet provider at a consumer price point. We were at $20 a month, and AOL was still charging by the minute. And so we just sent this. I sent this yellow 4x6 postcard, and on one side was the customer's address and our return address, and some little headline. And on the flip side, there was a graph, and there was AOL 1 hour a month, $300. 1 hour a day, $300 a month. Internet America, as many hours as you want, but 1 hour a day, $20. And our response rate, the lowest response rate we had on that the 3 times we did it was 8.5% on a postcard, essentially. And that was about targeting and understanding, kind of lucking into, the market at the time. I had actually been looking around, what am I going to do next after the Amiga thing? And I was thinking about moving to Costa Rica and starting I can't even believe I thought this. And someone really loves my snort. It's you, right? You like it when I snort. So I was going to set up an aquarium company where we exported saltwater fish on demand to the saltwater aquarium market in America. Stupid idea. But as I was trying to figure out, I invented a box that would keep them alive for a week and a half, and all this stuff. And, I have a patent on it. And so I started thinking, you can't print a catalog and say what you had available, because, by the time you print it and you distribute it and somebody makes an order, the fish is dead. So, and you can't just say, hey, what do you want? I'll go get it today. So I said, what about this internet thing? And I looked at setting up a storefront on AOL, and it was $35,000 just to make your first sale. I'm not going to do that. And so, what's this internet thing? And I spent weeks looking for a way to get on the web, right? And I went, okay, this is the business. And what I've kind of specialized in my career now is I look at businesses where the market demand is already being driven. So, every day, 10 times a day, somebody was talking about the internet. And then I like businesses where I make the sale once and get paid, all the time, which was, I guess, a SaaS business before it was called SaaS. And I wanted to sell to consumers. And Internet America, we started, and the day we opened, January 13th, 1995, and if you weren't born, I don't want to know. So we were on the front page of the Plano Star-Courier, Internet America opens for business. And that same day, Bill Gates was on the front page of the Dallas Morning News, and it said, full internet access through the Microsoft network. They had to read the story to get at some point in the future, but that's a big headline. So from the very beginning, people told us, you'll never compete, you'll never, these guys have big deep pockets and all this stuff. And we were the biggest internet provider in Texas in 90 days. We eclipsed AOL in 6 months in our marketplaces. We delivered a hell of a product. And it was really a war. It was fun.
Yeah. So how did that war end?
We went public in 1998. Valuation in the go-go days of the internet got to about $4.5 billion. I ended up resigning and suing my board because they would not register the options that we had promised everybody. And so you might have an option plan, but if you go public, they have to be registered through something called an S8, which costs $800, right? It's like, I'll pay for it, And, but they didn't want the flow. They didn't want that dilution to hit the marketplace. So they refused to register them. And the only option you had, no pun intended, was to buy them, pay the difference between your strike price and the market price, which was a big number back then, and pay the taxes, the ordinary income taxes on the difference, and then hold it for a year. I mean, these people were calling me and saying, Robert, the cashier at the grocery store is not taking my option paperwork. How do I do this? And I ended up resigning and suing my board and the company. And we settled that, and I gave away half my equity to get them to register the options. And so, can I talk about the core tenets of our business?
Yeah, sure.
So I run my businesses on 4 very simple rules. The first one is we do what we should, not what we can. And it becomes a very profound decision rule if you start to think about it. And so, if I was going to do what I should, not what I could, which is I could take the money and go away, and leave all those people who would sweat blood for me hanging, saying it's not my problem, I can't get the board to do it, or I could go to war for them, which is what I did. The second thing is come on guys, so do what you should, not what you can. Be right here, right now. And the way that manifests itself in our business is that you don't get to bring computers or phones to the table in a meeting unless you're using it to present. Because I don't care how good you are, how interested you are, when that email icon goes off, you look at it. I mean, everybody does. And as soon as you do that, you lose focus. So our meetings are very short. What? I'm getting there. Anyway,
Someone's
right here,
telling
right
the
now.
rest of the story over here.
And so the next one is systems are managed and people are led. That's really important if you can get to it. I hope you will. And then the third one, or the fourth one, is we're about what matters. And what matters to us is integrity matters. Guys, whatever. No, so integrity matters. Performance matters. People matter. Society matters. And you matter. And so that's how we run the business. So, I got the opportunity to really put my money where my mouth was with the option deal. And, and I have friends from 25 years ago who, if I call them and say I need them, man, they're there right now. And I'm able to recruit really super engineers and super people because the people who were there at Internet America will vouch for me. And that allows us to get super duper people.
Yeah, and something that you shared with me that I thought was really cool, I had so glad to write it down, that assets go home at night, and that turnover is the most expensive thing. Growth requires tribal knowledge.
In a hyper-growth environment, the most expensive thing there is turnover, and or attrition in your employee group. That I work really hard through leadership, through benefits, by paying a little bit over market, to attract and retain the best possible talent. If I told you the team we have at SurchX, you would not believe it. It's just miraculous. But that manifested itself. I mean, the data point for LifeLock was I built a call center there to about 250 employees over 3.5 years, and we had 0 voluntary turnover in the whole time. And that translated into a 93% retention rate, and for a SaaS kind of environment, consumer product, that's unheard of. And at Internet America, I actually had Southwestern Bell decide they were going to get on our business, and the president of the of Southwestern Bell's initiative called me and said, let's go to lunch. Okay. And he said, we focus grouped 100 of your customers. We offered all of them 3 years of free internet access if they would switch, and not one of them did it. How do you do that? He said, got a checkbook? Because if you do, I'll do it for you. And his checkbook wasn't big enough, so we went public instead.
Terrific.
But I will tell you, in hypergrowth especially, turnover and loss of tribal knowledge is so expensive.
So your next company was, it was great for societal good, but maybe not so great.
It was hard in my pocket.
Yeah.
It was really hard.
Yeah.
Called DotSafe.
So yeah, DotSafe.
So
Well, I'm sorry.
after I left Internet America, I wrote a book about keeping kids safe on the internet, and we moved back to Phoenix. And I was watching on the news like the day after Christmas that some girl had been, had met somebody she thought was 13 on the internet, and it ended up being a couple, and they stole her and took her backwoods to Tennessee, chained her up, turned her into a sex slave, and she got away. Called her grandfather on Christmas Day. And to me it was like being a doctor and driving by an accident. I mean, it's like, okay, I got the people, I got the money, I got the expertise. I was one of the leading experts on kid safety on the internet. And so I said, okay, and we started DotSafe, and we thought DotSafe would be a filtered internet provider. And so if you do focus groups, listen to this story. I did focus groups in 5 cities with more than 500 people, and all parents of kids between the ages 6 and 12. They all said, without deviation, they would buy DotSafe if it was offered. So I went in armed with that data, and I talked to Toys R Us, and Toys R Us agreed to make us the primary focus of their back-to-school circular, which is a big deal. And they they asked me to build 500,000 startup kits and put them in the point of sale. And I did that. I put 500,000 kits at every register at Toys R Us. And I'm going to ask you to guess how many we sold. Laddie? Your name really is Laddie? Okay. Guess, just guess. 500,000. We sold 37. 37. Needless to say, that was a pretty catastrophic loss. And then the dot-com happened, and so all of my other money started going away. And we did a pivot, and we became the first in-network, inline internet filtering and surveillance system in the world. And we installed it in the Mississippi Department of Education, and in 1 week we found 13 pedophiles, 11 of whom were teachers, put them all in jail.
What?
So as a member of society and a guy who likes to protect people, I feel really good about that. I lost my ass, ended up going bankrupt and getting really sick. And so that's a win on one side, and of course that's the one I decided to finance personally, right? So everything went away.
Wow. And then
we did some cool technology.
Yeah. And certainly, hopefully, saved the psychology and lives of a lot of kids there. So, very, very interesting. But then your life took another interesting turn when you were first diagnosed with bipolar disorder. So talk about how you kind of even came across the, hey, maybe I should go.
I was just super sick, and I'd been sick for 10 years, and nobody could ever tell me what was wrong, so they diagnosed me with Lyme's disease and all kinds of weird shit. And when I get depressed, it's very painful, physically painful, so they were always looking under my neck to figure out what was going on, and nobody ever could. And I just kept getting sicker and sicker and sicker, and then finally someone said, well, maybe you have major depression. And I said, okay. And they started treating me for that, and that didn't work. And I was losing my family. My wife was leaving me. I had lost my fortune. It was just really ugly. And I volunteered for electroshock therapy, which is called electroconvulsive therapy. And because it's a cure for major depression, completely contraindicated for bipolar disorder. So I underwent half a dozen or 10 sessions, and it shocked me into this gigantic mania. And I ended up in Vegas, and I ended up winning a lot of money.
This is where the story gets really good.
This is where the story gets good. And they were like, oh, maybe you're bipolar. Of course, you forget one of the side effects, and Amy will back me up here. Dr. Sarin is one of the world's leading neuroscientists. You lose your memory. They just tell you that you're going to not remember the next 6 months. And that is the case. So, do you want to set the stage?
Well, you went to Vegas.
I went to Vegas many times. Fancied myself a blackjack player.
And then eventually, that trip to Vegas ended you up in jail.
Yeah, 5 deputy sheriffs knocked on my door and said, it's time to go to jail. And I'm like, what? And I said, for what? And they said, bank fraud. I'm like, what? I've never bounced a check. What? And they said, well, we don't know what it is, but you're coming in. So they hooked me up, and off I went to jail. And they ended up telling me that it was because of this outstanding marker, which is a loan, that was left at the Mirage Hotel. And I'm like, I didn't do that, because I have no memory of doing that. And I said, I didn't do that. And they're like, well, you know, they all say that, so you're going to jail. And I fought like a dog and spent 12 days in jail in the psych unit, which is a very interesting place, let me tell you. But I was sitting there and I'm going, I didn't do this, and how did I not know that there was a warrant for a felony warrant for my arrest? How could I not find that out? How did I not know that someone had done this to me? And that was the genesis of LifeLock.
Turns it into a business, goes to jail, turns it into a business. Serial entrepreneur, love it.
So it was the genesis of LifeLock. I said, there has to be a way to stop identity theft before it happens. And that was our whole thesis, to prevent identity theft, not report on it, which is the only other products that were on the market. So I got out, all the charges were dropped, I paid the marker because it was a lot cheaper than fighting it, and just figured I lost $16,000 and moved on. And I didn't have a penny to my name at the time, and someone bailed me out, and I love him, and I always will. But so anyway, I'm not a felon. All the charges were dropped. I can vote on the 6th. Please vote. I vote.
Yes.
Yeah.
Please
There
come
we go.
back. Please
Let's take
vote.
applause for voting. So, and then of course Ray Stern from the New Times got a hold of that story, and I have no idea how, and he just tells me he thought it up, and okay. But we were at war with experience, so that kind of gives you an idea. Ray wrote an article that said that I had lied about my identity being stolen, and that's how I started LifeLock. And the first time I read that, I was like, what? You know, I didn't lie about this. What are you talking about? And so I actually goaded him, smart guy that I am, goaded him to write it again and do it right. Because the first time he had this fuzzy picture that was supposed to be my license, and it was very poorly cited and sourced. I should have just left it alone.
I mean, it's the marketer in you coming out. It had to be right, right?
So he did it right the second time, and he convinced me that I had done it. So apparently I did it, and I have no memory of it. And I have no memory of a large part of that part of my life. My wife ended up evicting me from the house, and it was a very, very dark time. And I ended up
being an entrepreneur is just a lot of sunshine and rainbows, right? It's about headlines and TechCrunch and
yeah, it was pretty ugly. But that time of my life, the doctors had said, Robert, give it up, you're never going to work again. And I was like, fuck you. And that's exactly what I said. And you know, all I did was go out and start LifeLock. And then, what's next? What do you want to do next? It was the first of 2 times that they told me I'd never work again.
Well, next I have it turning a nice corner, and that's talking about SurchX.
Oh, okay.
It's like, she glossed over that. What else is there in between? No, actually, just to take a break here, you do have a background in the military, so thank you so much for your service. Thank you. How has your background in military then shaped your focus and your lens in your entrepreneurial efforts?
Well, that's why I talk about leading people and managing systems. People, yes?
No, I was just scratching.
There's something in my face? What? Oh, you're scratching your face. Okay. So people are not inspired by managers, and People will go through steel doors for leaders. I mean, they will run into machine gun fire for leaders. They will run into it for each other. They will kill people to keep their team safe. So what I focus on in my businesses is building elite teams and creating what I call a self-healing organization that creates leaders internally. So in a managed organization, you'll get an outstanding performer come in to call it a five-man or person, sorry, customer support team. And you have a standout performer and you just blow away all the numbers. And the manager, what does the manager do in a managed organization? You tell me. You, no, the other one, not you, Amy. What does a manager in a management company do when he has a standout performer on his team? No, what does a manager do? Well, no, he doesn't tell anybody about him, right? He hides him because he makes the manager look really good, right? Well, in our organizations, we actually pay our leaders if someone out of their organization is promoted to leadership. So, and you are not incented to keep people down, right? So what happens when you have a standout performer is he puts it on his resume and then leaves for the next place and gets a promotion. In our companies, they get promoted all the way through, and I've made a couple of hundred multimillionaires out of people who started at $12 an hour.
Yeah.
You know, so.
It's awesome. It's incredible. Great strategy. Okay, so SurchX, exactly how did you come up with that idea?
I actually was introduced to it by a guy in my Bible study who told me that it was okay that merchants could now pass their credit card processing fees on to their customers, and I thought that was against the rules. In fact, I told him, no, that's against the rules, and he said, no, there was a court case that settled this. So I did some homework, and immediately it was like, this is a universal problem. Demand is being driven. It's a huge market, $6 trillion a year song, for those of you who know marketing. It's $6 trillion a year.
Yeah.
And
small number, very tiny.
Yeah, it's only a third of the GDP, right? And it's a universal problem. So I was like, okay, this is the next business. And it sounds like it's really simple, right? You just charge 3.5% to your customer and it's all good. Well, it is not easy. There are 60 regulatory agencies involved with e-commerce and interstate commerce in surcharging. The downside risk, of course, is that you lose your merchant account and you're out of business. But the upside is we add 30-40% to your net margin overnight with no investment and no ongoing expense. So we've spent a year and a half, November, so almost 2 years, November 16, putting this together. We had our first dollar of revenue this month. Thank you very much, Krishna. And the pipeline is just, impossibly huge. Just our existing contracted pipeline.
And full circle, your offices are in LifeLock's building.
My offices are in the LifeLock building.
You can't escape.
So now we got almost $4.5 million in economic incentives, cash incentives to locate downtown. So we're putting an office in downtown. $4.5 million. That's serious dough.
Absolutely. So what, if you want to actually kind of expound a little bit more on why you decided to keep this company in Arizona, is it part of the tax incentives that keep you here, or are there other reasons? Okay.
My grandson lives here.
Okay.
That's me. I have a 4-year-old grandson who's like, that's why I live here. Well, very simple.
I don't know. Everyone has their reasons, so it's always good I love hearing why people decide to build and keep their companies here. So, terrific. All right, now we get to go to the really fun part. We will have time to do some audience Q&A, so start baking up your ideas and things that you'd like to ask. But now here's the serious stuff.
Well, this is the,
So
the
serious.
flash
Yes.
cards. Okay.
Okay. Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Beer or wine? Oh, you have some
vodka,
strong ones. Okay,
please.
vodka, yes. Sushi or tacos?
Sushi.
What's your favorite app?
Grubhub.
Grubhub? Very nice. Okay. What is your favorite operating system? Like Apple or PC?
I use them both,
Okay.
so I'm kind of enjoying Windows 10 right now.
I think you're my first Windows person then. What's your favorite holiday?
Father's Day.
Oh.
Absolutely. That is my day.
What's your favorite car?
The one I drive,
And that is?
Ford F-150 4x4.
Okay. Okay. And then what's your favorite vacation spot?
Anywhere with warm, clear water.
Okay.
Because I scuba dive.
What's your favorite book?
The Killer Angels by Michael Shara.
Your favorite movie or TV show?
That's easy. The Princess Bride.
What a good Halloween costume that would be too, huh?
The Dread Pirate Robert, here I am.
Love it. Who's your favorite musical artist?
Phil Collins.
What's your favorite go-to karaoke song?
None.
None? You wouldn't be cut then, no? Okay.
I don't care anymore.
Maybe enough vodka. No?
Not vodka.
Okay. Anything you collect?
What?
Anything you collect?
Companies?
Yes, you do. Any unusual skills or talents?
Not really.
Your top, your top strength in business?
My ability to think laterally. So while other people are trying to solve a problem, I'm trying to go around it.
What profession other than your own would you want to attempt?
I would love to be a trauma surgeon.
Ooh.
I would love that.
What's the best compliment someone can give you?
I've actually gotten it. I saw this today. I'm sorry, I'm cheating. Todd Davis, my co-founder at LifeLock, walked into me one day after I had done something for someone, and he said, "I finally know the difference between us." He said, "I'm nice, but you're kind." And I said, "Todd, that is the nicest thing anyone's ever said." So that was it. Tell me I'm kind and I will be happy.
Love
Rub
it.
my belly. I'm easy.
Back to liking dogs more than cats. A cause you're passionate about. What's a cause you're passionate about?
Mobilizing the electorate so that we bring rationality and actual humanity to our country again.
Yeah. Who are 5 people, alive or dead, you'd want to have dinner with?
Who would I have dinner with? I would love to meet Richard Branson. I'm not really a starstruck guy, so I'd love to meet Richard Branson. I'd love to have dinner with Genghis Khan. I'd love to have dinner with Jesus Christ. I think Condoleezza Rice would be a very interesting dinner companion, and I think Colin Powell would also
Okay.
be a great dinner companion.
Amazing. Cool. And then last thing, what's one thing on your bucket list?
To take my grandson scuba diving and show him the underwater world.
Oh. And then maybe mail some exotic fish out afterwards, huh?
Start his own aquarium.
That's right. Okay, now it's time for Q&A. Who wants to go first?
Look at this, we answered all the questions beforehand.
If you were diagnosed from a younger age, would you have disclosed your mental illness, or would you have kept it private?
I am so out there about being bipolar. It is not a choice. It is not a personality flaw. is a major illness that has the same kind of mortality that cancer has, I got no problem talking about it. I did not, it's not a choice. It is a real, deadly, horrible illness, not just for the sufferer, but for the families as well.
Do you think if you would have been diagnosed earlier, though, if you were younger, because now you were diagnosed a little bit older in life, would you think you'd have been too self-conscious, like maybe as an adolescent, to disclose it then at that point?
I can't answer that
Yeah.
question because it didn't happen. So
Okay.
it took me a long time to understand the illness, and it's
Well,
really,
not just you, it sounds like your doctors as well, because they went for the wrong thing first.
I can't. The stories about people who are bipolar and people who are schizophrenic or other mental illnesses, about us being misdiagnosed. It's usually an average of 7 times for bipolar disorder
Wow.
that you're misdiagnosed. Who's next? Somebody's in charge. Oh, follow-up question.
Do you think it adds complexities or other risk factors, and how does that work when you're scaling and getting investment, especially if you're trying to take a company public?
Sure, that's a great question. Are investors afraid of mental illness? And our first investor at LifeLock, our first venture investor was Bessemer, and it was David Cowan. And I told David I needed an employment agreement that gave me 30 days free pass. If I didn't show up for 30 days, everything was okay. And he asked me why, and I started telling him. He goes, "Oh, you're bipolar. My cousin's bipolar." So we got over that one pretty fast. I have scared away other investors, I can assure you that. Some of my press, from Ray Stern in particular, has scared away investors. Life gets pretty messy when you're bipolar, and so some of that mess has followed me. So, does that answer your question? For scaling, you have to build, not if you're bipolar, but whoever you are, you have to understand that as a founder of a company with employees and families and investors and their families and customers and their families, you have a much bigger responsibility than to yourself. And you must build a self-healing leadership team. So my team knows what my symptoms look like, what happens when those symptoms are there. A couple of them have the right to talk to my psychiatrist at any time. And they watch out for me. And we watch out for each other because everybody brings their own baggage to the table, right? But, so you must, I don't care if you got a major illness, but you must build a self-healing organization so that you can fall off the face of the earth and the organization will continue. Go. She's handing in the microphone, but you go first.
So you mentioned that you like to collect companies. What kind of companies do you like to collect, and is there anybody that you didn't really mention during your talk?
I'll tell you about the one I didn't collect. How's that? So he asked me what kind of companies I like to collect, and I'll tell you the one that I didn't collect. So at Internet America, I had 2 young guys come in. We were in Dallas, and they said, "We will trade you 20% of our company for servers and bandwidth," of which I had a ton. I was the biggest internet provider in the state. And I said, "Okay, what do you do?" And they said, "Well, online dating." And we were incredibly conservative at Internet America. And I said, "Okay, guys, you need to give me a week to think about this." And what I decided was it was too much like the back page, and I didn't do it. You want to guess what the name of that company was? Match.com. $85 million mistake. So it taught me to keep an open mind.
What is your best word of advice to your 25-year-old self?
To my 25-year-old self, go to a psychiatrist. Yeah, that would be it. If you'd like me to give you something more existential, I would say save half your paycheck. Save half your paycheck. Live on half of what you make, save the balance, and invest it. That's the only way to guarantee that you're a multimillionaire by the time you're 40, by the way. Anybody else?
So I'd like to know if you have any thoughts around blockchain and identity.
Blockchain and identity protection? Is
Yeah,
that it?
identity protection and just using blockchain as an identity use.
So I would probably be shot in the parking lot for this, but I'm having a hard time understanding the application of blockchain in anything but the crypto environment. Blockchain is not new. DNS is blockchain. Telephone switches are built on blockchain, the kind of blockchain technology where you have multiple administrators creating a distributed data set that has to match everybody. So blockchain, the concept is not new. And for crypto, it is absolutely the perfect application. I have been shopped so many blockchain deals, and my question is always, why blockchain in this technology? And the responses I have gotten have generally been, it stops fraud. And I'm like, and so they'll tell me that the companies can't commit fraud. And like, I mean, we have laws for that. We have, technology is not going to, someone will always get around the tech. And so I never invested in any blockchain, at least not yet. But those are my thoughts.
Cool, thanks.
It's important. It's important in crypto, though. Very important.
Thank you very much. Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
I'm sorry?
Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Boy, that's a great question. Catherine, where do you want to be in 10 years? Probably playing with my grandchildren. I'll be gone from SurchX in the next 4 or 5 years for sure. I like to travel a lot, and probably buy another boat. I had a great boat in Hawaii. What about you? Where are you going to be in 10 years?
This is about you. We'll talk later.
Okay. All right. Well,
Robert, thanks for your sharing. You talked about a lot of things that, as I started commercial real estate in the early 80s, so I remember the RTCIs at United Bank across the street.
Sure.
You talked about when you have a high performer, high potential, what do you do with them? And the first thing that came to mind for me was in management, we often spend like 80% of our time with the low performers. So talk a little bit about that in your organization. Like, it's a great, this idea about self-healing, like, how do you bring them up? Is that, do you
The way I do it is I talk about and I train constantly on leadership. I don't really talk about management. I have a COO to do that. I talk about leadership at all levels of the organization and developing leaders inside the organization. The other thing we talk about a lot is culture and integrity. And if people truly believe that you live what you are saying you live, they will go through steel doors for you. A manager will try to make the 80%, 20% more productive. A leader will empower the 20% to make the 80% more productive. Boy, I like the way I said that. That was good. I'm going to quote myself on that one.
all right, we've got time for one more question. Oh, here you go.
He has good questions, by the way.
what were some of the biggest challenges of scaling LifeLock when it was a product that was solving a different problem than people were asking for? It was more of an insurance against instead of harm prevention, because what people actually want would be possible.
Okay, so I'm going to go on a little bit of a riff on that. Somebody asked me once on Quora, how do entrepreneurs think of things that have never been done, and how do they sell them? How do they sell products that people never knew they wanted? And the answer is that we don't. We solve problems that already exist. You know, back in the 60s, there was a TV show called Get Smart, and Maxwell Smart had a phone in his shoe. And everyone went, that is a cool idea, right? So what happened? The demand was there for a cell phone, but nobody knew what it was called, and nobody knew how to figure it out. So some visionaries got together and figured out how to do it, because Maxwell Smart really had a very cool phone. For LifeLock, people didn't say they wanted preventative identity theft, but that's what they wanted. They wanted their identity to be protected and not have any surprises. Internet America, I want to not pay $300 a month or not know what I'm paying. And so entrepreneurs, we're about solving problems in a new way, not creating new demand. If you're trying to create demand, that's basic research. That's figuring out what a microprocessor does. That is not what we do. Right? What we find is applications for existing basic research. I think we're done.
Yep.
Right on time.